We are up to Mishlei 10:26, and in a rare event, we have a straightforward to translate pasuk with no mitzvah, no sadyagon, and no targum. This should be pretty good. The words might be a little weird, but anyone want to try taking the translation here? Kachometz leshinayim v'cha'ashen la'inayim kein he'atzel l'sholchav.
I could try.
Yeah.
So like I don't know if that's like leavener or like vinegar.
Yeah, vinegar.
Vinegar to the teeth.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry.
And like,
why did I say death? Yeah.
And like smoke to the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So is the lazy person to his senders or messengers? Yep. I'm not sure.
Yeah, senders.
Yeah, senders. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. Yep, that's it. And as you'll see here in the English translations, I don't think there's anything weird. Our scroll says like vinegar to the teeth and like smoke to the eyes. So it's a sluggard to those who send him. I never like the word sluggard. I think lazy person is better. Like vinegar to the teeth and like smoke to the eyes. So is the lazy man to those who assign him a mission. I guess they're trying to use the word shlichus in the broader sense, not like a I don't know, like an agent, right? Whatever. I don't think it changes the meaning. And then Aldrich says, like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, thus is the sluggard to those who send him. So very straightforward translation here. And this might be we'll see how many how long our analysis will take, but this is definitely a short, looks very short here. Yeah, all right, so what are the questions? Oh, and by the way, if this pasuk seems familiar to any of the class of 2019, apparently we did not do this one. I think we did one that had the same vibe to it, but it's not exactly this one. So it could be that if you do remember something like this, I guess try to like approach it with a fresh mind, but I don't know if this is ringing any bells. Okay, questions?
What's the senders?
Yeah, what do you mean, what's the senders? Like, I can understand that.
Like,
several...
what's a lazy person's senders? Like, I don't know.
Okay, yeah. Who? Yeah.
Like
who or what are these senders? Yeah.
What does it mean to be vinegar to the teeth or smoke to the eye?
Yeah. Okay. So what we're gonna do here is like this. What is? And I think it's here that I think it's like pretty clear that this is an analogy, right, or a metaphor. So what is the analogy of like vinegar to the teeth and like smoke to the eyes? And then the question is, and I know this is gonna see. This is where like I think I would sympathize with I would be on the side of Zach here, which is that I think these are both different. Okay, I think these are two analogies, and I think the reason why I think that is because, like he said, two things. But you'd be surprised how many Mepharshim take this as just one idea. You know, so I am going to ask, just because methodologically, then this is a sound thing to do. I'm going to say, are these is this a repetition of the same idea, or are these two different ideas? In other words, even if this is a repetition of the same idea, I mean, yeah, okay, I guess at the base level, this could be a complete repetition of the same idea. It's just two different objects. You know, like if you said, for example, you know, like if you touch the kettle or touch the stove, then you're going to get burned, you know, and both of them are just two different examples of how you could get burned if you're not careful in the kitchen. Or you could say that it's two like nuances within one idea, or you could say it's two different ideas. I think those are the three like general possibilities. Maybe there's another way to put it.
Can I ask a sub question about this?
Yeah.
What's the muscle of vinegar to the teeth? Like, I can kind of like, I don't know, is it supposed to hurt your teeth or like something else? You know?
Okay, yeah. You know, I think that's actually a good way to divide the question here. Okay, so what is the muscle, and let's say here the muscle, see, I was complaining about this earlier in the week. In Hebrew, you could say mushal and nimshal. There's no real good way to say that in English, right? The metaphor and the thing that it's a metaphor for, like that's just the most cumbersome way to say it, you know.
The facts of the metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, It sounds weird though, right? I mean, that is what we're asking here. I guess I'll put it that way for this. What are the facts in the mashal? In other words, independent of the nimshal, nimshal aside. Nimshal aside. Okay. In other words, what quality of vinegar to the teeth is Shlomo intending to isolate here? Okay, and same for smoke to the eyes. Yeah, can't type today. Yeah. Was there another question there?
A bit of a scientific question.
Yeah.
Because I had a sneaking suspicion this might be the case, so I just quickly Googled it.
Yeah.
And vinegar can have two different effects on the teeth.
Okay, I also Googled that. Yeah.
That's
okay.
funny.
Yeah.
So one of them is that it can whiten it if it's used in small doses.
Okay.
And the other is that it can decay and erode the teeth.
Right. Yeah.
So
and
cleaning versus harming.
Right, and it's interesting that it stems from the same quality, right? Because it's acidic, you know. So if you use a little bit of it or in a directed way, then it could like remove stuff from your teeth. But then if you use it in the wrong way, it could remove the teeth. Yeah. Okay, that's a good that's one good answer to this. I mean, I don't know if I don't think that's the only answer, but that is a good good answer. Okay, what else?
Also, general question: are we supposed to be like taking anything about the chacham from this pasuk?
Okay, yeah. So the question is, what is the who is the opposite here? Meaning, and this is going to be somewhat dependent on who is the audience of this pasuk.
And
Okay.
also dependent on how we end up. We've talked about who the lazy person is in the past, but in this context, who's the lazy person?
Right. Okay. So, in this context, what is a lazy person in this context? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Let me just make sure I capture that question. Rifki, does that capture your question here? Like, where is the chacham? Like, is the chacham the opposite of the lazy person? Is the chacham the opposite of the person who sends the lazy person?
Yeah.
Is it something else? Yeah. Actually, I'll put both those down. Is it the opposite of the lazy person, or the opposite of the one who sends the lazy person, or someone else? Yeah. Maybe this is I mean, this could easily just be, what do you call it, included in question number 3, but I am going to list this separately here. What are the facts in the nimshal? Okay, mushal aside. Okay, in other words, what happens when you send a lazy person? Okay, and obviously there are many things, but that's why I'm asking the question. Like, you know, what is Shlomo picking on here? I think the practical application seems to be pretty straightforward, that you should not send a lazy person. Seems like this is a bad thing, you know? But I guess maybe the question would be, what are the parameters of the practical application? Okay, like does this mean like you should never send a lazy person? Like, or like, does it mean, you know, like, it doesn't say, for example, that if you send a lazy person, then like you're going to destroy the world. It says it's like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes. So like maybe that's not the worst thing in the world, you know?
I also feel like the practical application is dependent on who the pasuk is talking to, because if we're talking to the senders, then the way we're framing it makes sense. But alternatively, he could be talking to the lazy person, meaning like, we're the lazy person, and how, you know, what message do we need to take out of that?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if this is like a weird question to ask, but why might someone make this mistake? Like, why might a lazy
Yes, okay,
person
good.
want
Yeah.
to send a lazy person?
Yeah, that's a very important question. So why would a person make this mistake? Now, just to rule out a false answer, what would be the simplest answer for why a person would send a lazy person? Simplest, total simplest answer.
He's lazy.
They didn't
Okay,
know.
that is simple. I thought you were gonna say that, but what was that?
Yeah, so they didn't know.
He didn't know, right? Now, why can't we? Like, he didn't know the guy was lazy, so why can't we use that as the case here, as the answer?
Well, if you don't know, how are you supposed to like go against that?
Exactly, right? So if you don't know, then this pasuk is never going to help you. You know, like if you just didn't know that the guy was lazy, you know. Now it might be telling you you should be on the lookout and assess whether the person's lazy or not, you know. But like in other words, Mishlei is only going to deal with cases that with decisions that you have control over, you know. And like if let's say you hire someone and their resume like makes them look very impressive, but really they faked it and like they're actually lazy, and then you get this consequence, that's not your fault. You know, so like Shlomo's not dealing with that. So that's where Isaiah's question really is here: is why would a person make this mistake?
And maybe that interacts with one of the points we were talking about earlier, which is the difference between vinegar and smoke.
Are you answering the question right now?
No, I'm just trying to tie in his point as to why a person might choose a lazy person.
Okay.
And just pointing out that vinegar and smoke might be I don't think it's an answer. You can tell me if this qualifies as an answer.
I'll mute you. I'll force my you. Yeah.
Is that smoke is involuntary, and vinegar smoke might be considered as involuntary, and vinegar might be considered voluntary. So he might be addressing more than one use case for using a lazy person.
That's possible. Yeah. It's like a half.
I find it interesting.
What was that?
I said it was like a half answer. You know, it's like a stepped in answer. Yeah, Mayan, what are you gonna say?
I was gonna say I find it interesting that that maybe I missed this in like the translation or something, but that you went to like sending a lazy person, because I automatically thought someone lazy is sending people. Like the lazy guy's the one in charge sending.
I thought that also.
So is the lazy person to his senders. I think you have to translate it as senders. Meaning,
right, so like the lazy person has messengers on his behalf.
Right, but I don't think messengers are the same as senders. Like shluchim, you know, shluchav, not sholchav. Right? Yeah. On that note, though, and this is a very, very minor question. Okay, why? So I'm going to just include it in number one. Why is senders plural? Okay, like, you know, just use the simple case of one sender. Usually, you only have one person who sends another person on a mission. Why emphasize the plural here? But again, if we don't answer that, then I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Okay, I think those are the questions.
Oh, I can pull a Zach on your just most recent question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe the fact that there are two different mashalim happening in this, maybe there are like two different situations, and so two different shliachs to talk about.
Okay, very good. You know how I can tell that that I shouldn't care about this? Even the Malbim doesn't care about this. I don't think when I look at the Malbim. Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't mean we shouldn't care. It just means that no one else cares. Okay. All right. So let's do our thinking minute / I'm gonna go get ice in this water because it's so hot here and I gotta get cool water. I'll be right back. We did have lazy person, right? Someone said that, but I just want to check and see where it was and how long ago it was. Oh, no, you know what we did? Huh, that's weird. So the term lazy does not appear in our chapter before. So it might be that we got it in early on in pasuk 5. One who harvests in the summer or who gathers in the summer is an intelligent son, and one who's fast asleep at the harvest season is a shameful son.
I think very recently there was a reference point when we're talking about someone who sees their own intelligence or something, and it was referenced something to someone who's lazy sees themselves. I think it was like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we did talk about that. I do remember that. Yeah, a lazy person sees himself as wiser than 7 advisors or something like that. Yeah. And it's also possible that we had lazy in a different term when we in the pasuk before pasuk Daled, that the person who makes the false scales. But I guess this is the first time we've seen the actual term lazy. And truthfully, like I know my Shalhevet students have heard this ad nauseum, but it's like it's a good definition. Do we want to maybe just start with reviewing the definition of laziness, or trying to define it, and then that'll give us like leeway to because I'll tell you my Mishlei intuition here, by the way, and you could disagree with me. I don't think that this pasuk is defining a lazy person. I think it's about a lazy person, it's the consequences. And I also don't even know if it is necessary to define lazy person for the purpose of this pasuk. I think you could just, one when you see one, and like we'll get clarity by defining laziness, and we might realize it's like broader than it was, but I don't think we need to. But the question is, does anyone want to, or would anyone object if we just really quickly review laziness here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so anyone remember the Sadigon's definition of laziness in Mishlei?
No.
Inability to avoid short-term pain.
Okay, yeah, that's basically what it comes down to. The way I defined it in the way that I drilled it into my Shalhevet students' minds in 9th grade was the compulsive need to avoid all immediate pain and conflict. And we got to take a moment to just appreciate this definition here, because I think if you look at the dictionary definition of laziness, I really should have asked this beforehand. How would most people, the man on the street, define lazy? Like what's the common sense definition?
Lack of drive.
Lack of drive is what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, lack of drive, lack of motivation, right? So the solution for laziness, according to that, would be motivate them, right? Give them motivation, but in Mishlei world, according to Sadigon, laziness is the need to avoid immediate pain. So you might have someone who is motivated, but the motivation is not going to get them out of their laziness. In fact, there are very few things that can get them out of their laziness. And this is a side topic. This is really a question of like how to cure laziness, and there's a lot of pasukim about that. Hold on, there's a loud plane overhead. I'm just going to wait till this plane passes by. I guess you can't hear it because of Zoom, so maybe it only matters to me.
I can hear it too.
Oh, you can hear it.
I hear it.
Well, you're also in Far Rockaway, so maybe you're hearing the same plane. Anyway, the lazy person. One of the only ways to motivate the lazy person is if you can take the future pain and make it immediate, and that's why in Mishlei, the opposite of the lazy person is the chacham, because the chacham is Ezeu chacham haro es hanolad, who is wise, one who sees the consequences. And as Ryan Moskowitz explained, I don't know if this is pshat or if this is drush, but seeing the consequences doesn't just mean knowing the consequences. It means like you see it like it's real to you, like your 5 senses, So with a lazy person, having a benefit, knowing that like if they get an A on this test, then like they might have a greater chance of getting to the college they want. That's not going to motivate them. But the feeling of panic and the pain of failure, that can motivate them. But the problem is it's not going to motivate them if it's in the future, So that's why like the antidote to laziness is chachma, but how you get the lazy person to the chachma is a whole endeavor. Like that's what a lot of other psukim deal with. Yeah, Ariel?
There's another question that I think we forgot to ask. Why is the pasuk singling out a shliach?
Yeah, that is a good question. Let's what are the parameters of the practical application? Why? I'm gonna just say why focus on a. Now, are you asking on the shaliach, meaning why focus on the lazy person as a messenger, or are you saying why focus on people who are sending the lazy person, or is that the same question?
Well, I think the latter. But let me just express my question.
Sure.
Let me just explain to you what I think the second half of the pasuk is in terms of the translation.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's a shaliach asking a lazy person to do something for him. Is that right?
No. So shaliach is the person who is carrying out the mission. So in this case, the lazy person is the shaliach. The sholeach.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you're right. I just got my twisted. Someone is asking the lazy person to be shaliach. Okay,
Exactly.
right. Yeah. So why are we just focusing on that individual?
Right. So I think that question lends support to the notion that the pasuk is not aimed at the lazy person; it's really aimed at the senders. And it's warning them about who to send and who not to send.
Just to ask question on that question, like in what other context are you relying on a lazy person other than when you're sending them to do something?
Right. That's a good question.
I hope I would just get away with it.
What was that, Arya?
No, I said I was thinking about that question also. I just felt like
that is good. I mean the what do you call it? That I think that'll be clarified when we answer what the parameters are. But I think Isaiah's right. It's like you're not by definition when you rely on them, then it's in the capacity of like doing a task, which is a shaliach.
Right.
Okay, so just to round off this idea here about the definition of lazy person. So again, I don't think you need to define this for this pasuk in Mishlei, but it is someone who has a compulsive need to avoid all immediate pain and conflict, and the opposite of that is the chacham, who can see the consequences of his actions, and we can already begin to see. I mean, I think this like I didn't ask for people's approaches yet because I think this is just in the shot here, like just the facts here. Actually, fine. I'll ask for people's shot, but I'll just say I think that this question is like fairly obvious to answer now. What happens when you send a lazy person? I mean, but I guess that'll be clarified when we say how is it like with vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes. Okay, so approaches, half approaches, or I guess start off with half approaches.
Yeah, I have like, oh yeah, go ahead.
Tomorrow you can go.
Okay. This I think is a half approach because I think it's not the main consequence. But
sure.
I was thinking about how when you ask someone to do something and like they don't do it or they're not effective or something, you're like a lot worse off than if you didn't ask them. Not just because it's not done, but because like now if you want to do it yourself, then like it's like interpersonal and awkward maybe, and like there's like a lot of baggage that comes with like the fact that
it could definitely create more problems and you can be worse off than before. Yeah, I'm thinking of an example, and this is not. Okay, I don't remember if this is due to laziness or not because I don't remember what was our internet access. We must have had internet. Yeah, we didn't have smartphones. Anyway, there's a time in yeshiva when we were sending out. This is back when we had a yeshiva dinner every year, and someone they divvied up the dorm guys to do like different jobs for the dinner. So one guy got put in charge of mailing all the invitations, and fine. So I don't know if this is laziness or ignorance. Okay, let's assume it's laziness for the sake of the thing. He didn't look up how to put a stamp on an envelope, so he put them all on the wrong side. Now I think it still works, but like it definitely does not make yeshiva look competent, to have the stamps on the wrong side of the envelope. And like assuming he could have looked it up or asked somebody and just didn't. And this is really, I guess this is an example of the Mishlei form of laziness here is you wouldn't call that lazy by the standards of lacking motivation, but you would call it lazy by the fact that if he felt ashamed to ask, then that would be a situation of immediate pain. and he would want, and if he's avoiding that, then that is a form of laziness, you know? So, so in that case, that for some reason tomorrow, that was the first case that came to mind. I'm sure there's many other examples of like, yeah, so now like we got to get new stamps and new envelopes, and like, you know, like there's a whole to do, you know? And that's obviously not the most egregious example. Like sometimes you have like real costs to like damage is done because the lazy people cut corners, or they don't ask how to do it properly, etc. Yeah, so that's a good quality to point out. Okay, Ariel, you also had an approach, half approach, I mean.
Yeah, I want to make a move and say that the both of the mushals in the pasuk,
yeah,
they're highlighting two elements within within the idea of sending a lazy person to do a job for you.
Okay, go ahead.
And
seems like a good approach.
Yeah, and I think this also may answer Isaiah's question: why would a person make this mistake?
Yeah.
It could be that you know he's lazy. I mean, I think that's what it is. You know he's lazy.
Yep.
However, you either don't know the parameters of his laziness.
Yeah.
Or you think that because this has really nothing to do with himself.
Yeah.
And there's no like pain for him to do this job because it doesn't really affect him so much. It only really affects the other person.
Yeah.
In an indirect way. So maybe you can say that will somehow remove his pain for the laziness.
Mm-hmm. Okay, meaning that many times the laziness comes from the fact that his own emotions are caught up in the conflict of doing the task, you know, but since he's just doing this for you, then those emotions might not be present.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah, like let's say for example, like you know, let's say you have to I don't know, let's say you have to apply for something, and like for you you got all this conflict with like sending out this application, and like, you know, and your psychological issues are there, so you just like pay your friend, okay, could you just like fill out all the basic info for me, and you're like, okay, he's not gonna have any of the conflict. Well, maybe his laziness is attached to like, you know, like doing something tedious, you know, like maybe that'll interfere, you know, maybe it's not the same issues that would make your laziness interfere, but it's his own issues, you know. Yeah. Okay, those are good answers for that question about why a person would make a mistake. Zach, did you
oh, no, I just wanted to go back to the I didn't really finish the
sorry
the two nutshells. So I think the smoke covering the eyes, like that is, you know, the smoke covering the eyes, meaning like you know he's lazy, but it's not really clear what the parameters are.
Okay. So that's very interesting. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Now the vinegar in the teeth, and I'm gonna borrow Google, you know, Zach's maybe Zach Google, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like if you rely on it too much, you know, that will just be very harmful.
You rely on Zach too much? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
If you rely on the lazy person, you know, so much, you know, that or at all, it could really hurt you, because at the end of the day, you know, the lazy person is, you know, by innate lazy, so it'll just harm your entire operation.
Okay. So first of all, I just want to point out that so Ariel was reading like smoke to the eyes as smoke that covers the eyes. Did anyone have a different reading of that? Because I had not thought of it that way before.
I had a different one.
Yeah, how did you take it?
Me, I was thinking more like, not that it covers it, but like that smoke is like really painful. Like when, just like it's painful, it hurts.
Yeah, and I think that's why I am not surprised by the fact that the Mefarshim use, you know, a lot of them say that they mean the same thing. That when you have vinegar, when you drink vinegar, which I don't think any of us, unless there's something I don't know about any of you guys, I don't think we drink vinegar. But I think the closest thing that you can use for that analogy is if you've ever like had like like bitten into a lemon or something like that, you know, like
Bad
it's got like a
wine.
very, what was that?
Have you ever had a bit of bad wine?
Bad wine, yeah, right. I mean, that is literally vinegar, right? Or if you're one of these people who like has got into my grandmother Papa was into the fad of like drinking apple cider vinegar every day, you know. And that came up from like Google search. Like there's people who believe that there's health benefits to that. Anyway, so just any sort of like very, very acidic thing, you know. So because of that quality, I thought that it was smoke in the eyes. And I think maybe because of the lamed here, like vinegar to the teeth and like smoke to the eyes.
I was
but
taking it as a relationship, meaning like what is the relationship between smoke and eyes?
Yeah.
And it is both an obstruction and a agent of pain, meaning like if it comes in contact with your eye, then it hurts. But even if it doesn't, it's an obstruction.
Right. And I think maybe that's also why I was not inclined to think of it with the obstructing quality, like Zach and Ariel are saying, because I was thinking like, you know, you would need a lot of smoke for it to like actually like obstruct your vision in a significant way. And it's possible that was common back then. I don't really know what they burned for fuel, so I don't really know. Some stuff is smokier than others. So I was just thinking of the pain, but
I mean, I would like. I feel like it depends a little bit on how you end up interpreting the pasuk, because if you can use that quality to your benefit, then that's great.
Yep, definitely. Yeah. Okay, so I hear what you're saying, Ariel. Okay, good. So anyone else have any other approach? Oh yeah, sorry, Zach.
Yeah, I had an approach.
I think Zach, you.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I feel like mine is a bit of a radical, convoluted one, so maybe we'll circle back to that in a second.
All right, go ahead, Isaiah.
Oh, okay. So mine is maybe also a little convoluted. But I was going to use both Zach's Googling from the beginning of shiur and Ariel's interpretation of the Ashan. Both of them are. I'm also like not really differentiating between them. Both of them are things that at first, like, seem to have a certain effect at first, but then go away. Like the home mace is a thing which I guess we were saying at first it's like good if you have a little bit, but if you have a lot, it could rot your teeth.
Yeah.
And the Ashan, like at first it's blinding you, and then it goes away and it's gone. So like I was thinking maybe you could say the Atzal, he like, especially in the way that we defined it, he seems like he might be able to do a task, but at any point the task might become hard or painful to him, and then he will stop doing the task. So you might make the mistake of like, you know, hiring him to do something for you because he could do stuff that isn't painful to him, but if this thing becomes difficult, then he's just going to stop doing it.
Right. So what's the quality then that you're isolating in the two mashalim? Is that it's
it like seems to be, it is a certain thing at first and then changes to like a different thing.
That's
like
painful.
Smoke dissipates. Not really that. One of them is painful. The other one isn't really painful, but I'm just going on the dissipating or the changing factor of it.
So I hear what you're saying, and I think my main objection to it is that I feel like it is too specific for that, and I feel like there are other ways to get across the notion that like the appearance of benefit is like only temporary, you know. And I feel like the something about that incongruity, like the two mashalim seem very specific, and it's just that's not what I would. Not that should be the test of the pasuk. Like it's what I would choose for the mashal, but I feel like I'm missing something for the first half with that approach, you know.
Well, to support him, I mean, I guess the relationship of those two mashalim is that they both were, like the fact that they were wine and fire before they were vinegar and smoke.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So that I think is a useful thing, is that there's the vinegar used to be wine, and then the smoke is a byproduct of fire. So yeah, that's good.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah. See, that's the type of thing where like I feel like that's a like, you know, like, oh, now we see a connection and like basis for an idea, like gears are going, you know. I don't know where they're going, but they're going.
Okay, so I don't really have that was just a point that Isaiah made me think of right now, because the way he was framing it. But
you want to say a radical thing now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what we're gonna need to do to, or what hoops we're gonna need to jump through to make
Oh
this
boy.
work.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'll start with just defining the lazy person again, just because of how I was thinking it. I think it's the same definition, but I just had a way of I phrased it in my head.
Mhm.
So it's basically a person who prioritizes doing less above other things. So it's
Okay.
not to the it's not to not inclusion of other drives. It's just that they prioritize doing less above those other drives.
Right.
And like that's a goal in of itself, is just
Yeah.
the idea of doing less.
Right.
So then I went to the first half, and I was wondering, what is it about teeth and eyes, meaning vinegar and smoke seems easier to understand, what they represent, but what is it that teeth and eyes represent? Like, why are we talking about teeth and eyes? It seems random. So I realized that both of those are things that help you achieve things. They have very specific goals. They're like tools. And so we can almost look at the senders as the people, like senders are people that are trying to achieve an objective. So essentially the relationship at this point is that there's a goal that's trying to be achieved. And that's what how the senders relate to teeth and eyes. But then I was thinking that you could really achieve that same connection with any tool, right? Rust to a hammer, any tool of construction could be used to achieve that kind of parallel. And it occurred to me that what's interesting about teeth and eyes is that they're tools that are within us, which if we apply it to the second half, this is where it gets convoluted or radical.
This is where it gets convoluted. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Is that if the sender is not just a tool, but it's a tool within us, then we would be talking about our own drives. So both the lazy person and the sender are the same person. So the sender are your
yeah, okay.
So the sender is your drives and motives to accomplish, and the lazy person is the urge to prioritize doing less above your other drives and motivations. And so now if we go back to the first half and say, well, what's he telling us about this relationship within ourselves, is he's dividing it now into two types of laziness. One is chosen and one is unchosen. This is just plugging from the idea I lightly mentioned before, which is smoke is somewhat out of our control. If there's a fire, there's smoke, whereas vinegar is something that you're choosing to ingest. And I feel like in laziness, there's potentially, and this is where it's not fully fleshed out yet, but in laziness, I do feel like that there's going to be two types of laziness. There's going to be conscious laziness, like I want to do this, and almost like habitual laziness, meaning like as a product of how I'm thinking and how I'm behaving, and I'm just going to engage in lazy behavior. And the way to react to each of those laziness categories are slightly different. If it's the smoke kind of laziness, that's just habits, meaning in the moment it's out of your control, meaning because you already have the habit. And the way to mitigate smoke is to catch it as early as you can. Meaning don't build a fire, or as soon as you see something catching, putting it out. Waiting till it's built up is harder. So essentially with habits, he's saying catch it as early on as you can, not in terms of time, but just in terms of like before the moment. So pre-establishing counter lazy habits is the way to go. And then as far as in the moment, like conscious decision making, I think the use of vinegar is very interesting, because laziness is actually a very effective tool in innovation. If you look at innovators through all of human history, there's a touch of laziness, not in
because
how
less
they live.
is often more.
Right. Meaning like they're not actually not putting in effort, but their goal is to save time, to save energy, to save money, to do something that And so vinegar has that similar quality, which is if you use a teeny tiny bit of it, it's healthy for your gums and your teeth, and it can clean them. But any more than that, and you just rot away your teeth. And so laziness consciously can be used the same way. Is if you just think, oh, I'm always being smart, I can always be lazy, then you're just going to be rotting at your own goals. But if you can use it in the small doses, then you can use that to further your goals and to be innovative.
Okay. Well, that you were right, and your warning was right. It was definitely convoluted. The ideas that you said I like. I think my two main objections are how convoluted it was, and I think the move of saying that the lazy person and the sender are the same person. I feel like at that point, Shlomo should just say laziness or the lazy person.
Well,
I see that you're working out a different idea of like portraying the sender and like the analogy with the teeth and the eyes and having the mission. It's a little too convoluted for me, but I appreciate your taking the idea as far as it went. We'll slot that in at the 2 a.m. UK Zach idea, but bravo. Okay. Anyone else have ideas here? Yeah, Ariel.
Answer your plural question.
Oh, sure.
Maybe you could say that that once the sender sent the lazy individual and he sees him not doing his job, he may try to get someone else to get him to do the job, but it still doesn't work.
That's funny. Yeah. That's the type of idea that is good for this type of, the question is a minor question and I would want it to have a minor answer. So that's a good minor answer, that the lazy person is going to need, right. Even many people encouraging the person to do it is not going to help, So that's good.
You can send 100 people, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Rifki?
Yeah, I have some thoughts. Not I don't think it's an idea. Whatever. I'm just gonna start talking.
Yeah.
Basically, what I was thinking was and I don't know if it was Zach or Tamar. Someone might have alluded to this, but I was thinking why specifically smoke and vinegar, and I think maybe why is because, and also it relates to the question of why would someone send a lazy person? That's honestly just idiotic. It doesn't make any sense. If you do that. So I was thinking that with those two things, vinegar and smoke, they're not super intense. I feel and I'm also connecting that to the laziness, meaning just those two things aren't so intense. It's not like saying fire. If you, let's say, got burned, that obviously is more painful than smoke, and it's quicker than smoke. So I think that I think he's doing this, that he's comparing that to this type of laziness of this person that's being sent, is that just those two things aren't immediate and they're more, I guess, low key and I guess not intense. The same thing with this type of laziness, that you might not initially realize it, but it actually will be debilitating to whatever you're trying to accomplish, and it will make you either not accomplish it or just ruin it or make it not what you wanted. And yeah, I guess my point is that it's not as blaringly or blatantly, whatever word you want to use, obvious.
Yeah. So I think you could take two directions in what you're saying there, because I agree with the observation. This is low key pain. It's irritating. It's an irritant to the teeth and it's an irritant to the eyes, but it's not you're right. It's not it's burning down your house, and it's not it's knocking out your teeth, So you could take the direction of that it's going to be a future thing. But I think the better way to take that direction is, if you have smoke that gets in your eyes, it stings. But if you are prolonging your exposure to the smoke, then it actually causes harm, And same thing with the vinegar, that a little bit of vinegar on your teeth is acidic. But if you are constantly having the vinegar on your teeth, then it's going to rot your teeth out, So yeah. That's I think taking the same route of short-term, long-term, but just extending it into the muscle in a slightly different way,
Yeah, I think to build on that, the differentiator that I would see between those two would be that smoke can hurt instantly.
Yeah.
And you can recover from it instantly.
Right.
Whereas vinegar can't hurt your teeth instantly. It takes a lot of exposure.
Right.
But once the damage is done, it's irreversible.
Okay, that's a good categorization. I like that. Yeah, Tamar.
In terms of extending the mashal, like what you were just saying, is it like you are relying on the same specific lazy person again and again for lots of different things? Is that like the repeated exposure? Like,
and yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That was it. That was my question, I think.
That would really fit into what Isaiah was saying when I asked what's the simplest explanation for like why you would send someone is if you yourself are lazy, you know? Like I definitely feel like this happens a lot where you hire someone to do something and like you're doing it again, not necessarily out of laziness, maybe it's out of like efficiency. But then you realize that they don't do a good job, and like it's just so much work to like hire another person to do it that you just have them do it, keep on doing it, and then like they just keep on doing a bad job, you know? So that's definitely a good possibility here. Okay. Which is even worse because if you are doing that out of laziness, so then you kind of partake of the same fault as this guy, and like that's, you know, what's your excuse?
You know what was?
Yes.
I just ask another question. It seems like, you know, like the two mashalim here, you know, one idea we're taking is, if I'm understanding correctly, that, you know, they're kind of like the same mashal for the lazy person. I mean for the second half of the pasuk. Right. Is that true?
Meaning that smoke and the vinegar are just are saying the same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one approach that we could take, and then the other. Yeah.
So my problem with that approach is, why is it necessary? It seems just one is enough. It's a little redundant. What is one adding that the other one isn't?
Right. So again, this is something that like that is very common throughout the Mefarshim, in Mishlei and throughout Nach, is that just for the sake of poetic, you know, for poetic stuff, you know, like it just uses two different forms of imagery just to get across this idea that it's going to be like this bitter result, you know, and that's, you know, that if you think about song lyrics, like people do that all the time. Like it's not like every single lyric is a different idea. It could be like, you know, just you know, it's hitting different emotions in different ways. Again, I think for this one, my intuition is that it should be two different things, but I'm just trying to justify why they take it as one.
Maybe like two different degrees of the same thing or something like that. Like, you know, hurts a little and hurts a lot, or something like that.
That could be, right. Yeah. You know, or you know, I don't know, like for some people some people don't like bitter stuff, but the smoke doesn't bother them. Some people it's the other way around, you know.
Another interesting option that I just thought of now is that it could be a way of setting parameters, meaning that the thing that he's saying is a mashal for the lazy the relationship or whatever we're going to learn about the lazy person to the sender from, let's say, smoke to the eyes, also has to be able to fit in to the analogy of vinegar to the teeth. So you end up with less options, not more. Between
right. So right. That's the example of that comes to mind just as an example of the thing is like the beginning of Koheles is Divrei Koheles ben David Melech Yerushalayim, and I remember the Metzudas David says there. So it's weird because Koheles is Shlomo, but it doesn't identify him as such. So he says Ben David tells you that he was a son of David. Melech Yerushalayim tells you that he was a king, and there were lots of sons of David and there were lots of kings of Yerushalayim, but if you have both of them together, then it identifies that it's the one who fit both those qualities, you know?
Right.
So it's conveying a simpler idea, but through two things. That's a good logical reading, like way to read it. It's either, so now we have, just in terms of how to read the first half, it's either two examples of exactly the same thing, let's say like a bitter, an irritant, you know, or it is and it's
the coding term I think for the other options are and statements or statements.
Okay, right.
Not that I'm a coder, so someone else can correct.
Okay, no, that's a good way to state that. Yeah, right. So either it's exactly the same, or it's two different things, or they are, or it's one thing that is being expressed by two things. Yeah. Okay. Anyone have any other ideas? If not, I want to share an approach. It's two half approaches I have. Maybe it's not two half approaches. It's a not full approach, but enough of an idea. And then the second one is I want to take you through Rבינו and Yona, because Rבינו has a very, very interesting approach. So anyone have anything else?
I have maybe another thought.
Sure.
I think you could kind of think that like, I'm gonna ask this lazy guy to do something for me, and like, what could go wrong? Like, worst case, he's not gonna do it.
Yeah.
But I think it's not really worst case. I mean, first of all, if you expect him to do it and he doesn't do it, then you're like set back. But even if you aren't sure he's gonna do it, I think that doing someone being the one who's supposed to do this thing for you and doing it in a lazy way, I guess this is kind of what I was saying before, can be like a lot more destructive than you expect.
Right.
Like you could kind of think it's like either he's going to help me or it's going to be like a wash, but I think it's not necessarily going to be. It might be worse than either of those.
And maybe that's just the idea that it's saying by this by using these two examples that like I'll show you one idea first of all. So the Metzudas David, I'm going to come back to what Tamar's saying in a second. Metzudas David says, "Kamosha hachomitz maziku l'shinayim," just like the vinegar is damaging to the teeth. So too the lazy person is damaging to the one who sent him, because he's relying on him, and he's lazy in the matter. So maybe that's the thing, is that it is both painful and actually damaging to things that you need, like your teeth. You do not want to ruin your teeth, especially back then. You only get one set of teeth. You can't go to the dentist and get like a false teeth or whatever. And your eyes also, like, it's painful and it's actually damaging, and I think that's the main consequence to sending a lazy person. Now, the question of why would you send a lazy person, but by the way, did anyone from Shalav in the class of 2019, did this pasuk sound familiar to you? Okay.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, it does. All right, so I'm going to give the same, and there again, there's another pasuk that had a I think it says someone who sends a lazy person, it's like he's cutting off his own feet, which is a different idea. But I want to give an idea that I said in high school here, because I think this is the best answer to the question of why would you send a lazy person? Okay, so I think it's the best answer. So here's the mistake. Okay, is you have your own priorities about what you want to get accomplished, and you relate to the person who you're sending as a tool, as an extension of your own will. And in reality, though, they don't have your motives. And if they're lazy, then they have their own faults, So it's a mistake, is you are viewing them as just an extension of yourself, when in reality, they are their own independent operating person. And when they're lazy, when they're a normal person, then that's not going to affect things, because then they'll do their job. But when they're lazy, then it'll their own faults will take over, And I'm sure 100% sure I gave this example in high school. So I'm going to give it again because it was a good example. Is rookie mistake I made in my first year of teaching, as I was teaching this group of misbehaving 10th grade boys, and we got to the classroom and the classroom door was locked, and like the class was starting, and so like I had all of the students around me. I didn't want to just like leave them, so I asked one of the students, I said, "Could you go get a custodian?" So like I'm waiting. He goes off, waiting, and I realized, oh, what am I doing? Obviously, he's not going to go get a custodian, because that means we have to start class, And like, sure enough, like he comes back like a while later. I was like, oh, I didn't find one, and I was like, what took you so long? Oh, I was taking the long route, the scenic route, or something like that, So like, this is a perfect example of I had my priorities, which is to teach. I appointed a shliach who had his own priorities, which is to avoid learning, and I just viewed him as an extension of myself. And I was like, well, I'm basically envisioning myself going out and doing that thing, when really like it's completely not, So I think that's like the general mistake, and this could happen for many reasons, but I think that's the general mistake that you make, is you treat the when you what's the word, delegate. When you delegate, you treat the person who you're delegating to as an extension of yourself.
I remember you using that example. That's
yeah.
so sweet.
Yeah, it's a good example. Yeah, Zach?
I just had a couple of thoughts of putting together some of the pieces I feel like we talked about already.
Sure.
But
sorry, let me just say one more thing, this might pave the way for whatever you're going to say. According to what I'm saying, then there's no real difference between the two first halves, but I'd be open to one. Because according to the way I'm learning the pasuk, the essential thing this is telling you is don't make the mistake of sending a lazy person, or you'll get bad consequences. Now, if you can show like two categorical errors, or two categorical like consequences, or two different degrees, then like I'm all for that, because that's not going to affect my main idea. Yeah, Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess starting with the motivation of why send a lazy person, I feel like that there is the starting scenario is that there's some necessity. Obviously, if you're have a task and there's two people in front of you, and one says, I'm lazy, and the other one says, I'm not, you're just going to choose the one who's not.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that we're talking about it means that there's a necessity, right? You're in a pressing situation, you need a custodian or whatever it is, and you need someone to get them, and you have limited options on who to send.
Right.
So I think that what he's doing is he's creating a picture so that we can make decisions consciously, meaning to know what the outcomes and results are going to be, and when it's going to be okay versus when it's going to be detrimental.
Okay.
And I think with the smoke analogy, it's kind of like you need to get something in a dark room. If you just all you have is a torch that you're gonna light, and you're gonna get some smoke in your eyes, like, okay, it's gonna sting for a few minutes, you're gonna go get what you need, and then you can put the torch out and leave the room.
Right.
And so I think the second half of the first, or the smoke analogy, is talking about a very short-term interaction.
Yeah.
And just a byproduct of that interaction, whenever you ask anybody lazy to do a task for you, even if it's very quick, there's just some element of pain that's involved, some stinging sensation, so to speak. Alternatively, if you integrate into a system, into a operation, into a long-term effort, a lazy person, then it's going to rot away at the foundations of what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really good. The idea is exactly the Rבינו Yona's idea, but the application to the mushal is different, which I want to read the Rבינו Yona in a second, but that's a really good approach. And I like the way you said of just making the conscious decision with this in mind, so hold off on that for 1 second. Then Ariel.
Yeah. Actually, I thought of a new approach, but I think it's related to what you were saying. Your example kind of opened another approach for the concept. I think that there's really like a two-step process over here, right? In your specific case, your mistake was you appointed someone who just wasn't fit for the job, right? So the first step of let's say recruiting someone for the job, or appointing someone, or whatever it is, or hiring someone for any job, is to like vet the individual to see if he's capable of doing the job. Now he may, now the smoke in the eyes is just it's just a fog that you have to clear in order to determine if he's fit for the job. Now it can be that the guy is lazy, and you do know he's lazy, but you will ignore those qualities. So that's one step. Now the vinegar to the teas, that's the consequence of the lack of your first step, which is making sure you appointed someone who's fit for the job. It's like the initial aspect of it, and then there's like the consequence of it.
Yeah, I don't see the analogy so clearly, and I think it would be weird if the order was that way, right? Because wouldn't it make sense to put the vetting them first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, wait, you mean in the first part?
Yeah. Not the biggest problem, but like that's
Well, I don't know.
All right, I want to show you this Rבינו Yona though, because this really is. You'll see it's exactly like what Zach is saying. So he says, let me just zoom in a little bit here. And the Rבינו Yona is very long. We're not going to do the second half because he applies it to something else, but I just want to touch on the methodology point. All right, so first here's the idea. So he says, so first of all, another fact here, which you could also get through Google, is that people used to drink vinegar for medicinal reasons. Okay, so it was like a medicine. So alpha pi sheyitav la'adam pa'amim l'refua, even though vinegar, I didn't read. Yeah, alpha pi sheyitav la'adam pa'amim even though a person will drink vinegar sometimes for health, v'ha'ashan lif'amim litzorech, and you'll get smoke sometimes for need. Vivaru or l'sheves negdo. Let's say like you need to make a fire to sit near, but you're gonna get smoke in your eyes. And you will not be able to arrive at these benefits without damage to one of your limbs. Vinegar damages the teeth, and smoke damages the eyes. So too the lazy person to his senders. Sometimes you need to send a lazy person, okay? Like what Zach was saying, like there's no other option. Okay, and you will get a benefit. And it's better to send him at a time of need. Better to send him at a time of need than to not send anyone at all. So it's like the case with my my classroom thing, you know, like I could leave myself and get the janitor. That's going to be a disastrous situation. Or I could just send a student and like hope for the best, you know? So sometimes it's better to send someone who's not going to do a good job than to send no one at all. Now, the counter case to that is what Tamar said, which is sometimes sending a lazy person is going to make things worse, you know? But this is another example. It says, however, sending him to do this will inevitably result in some damage in some area. Now he gives a good list here of how lazy people could damage you. One thing is he will not listen carefully to the words of the sender, and to store him in his mind, or to be exact with the words of the ones who sent him, or because of his procrastination or his lateness, then his fulfilling the task is not going to escape one of these types of harm. Or you could say that the damage is the fact that he doesn't get the thing done. If you send a reliable messenger, then he'll do everything that he needs to do to get it done. Okay, that's a separate point now. All right, so let me just reiterate here. So according to the way that the I was learning it initially, and that the Matsudas David was saying, is he's saying, don't make the mistake of sending a lazy person because you're going to get harmed. Rבינו Yona is saying, no, sometimes you need to send the lazy person, but you need to go into it with eyes open and know that you're going to get smoke in those eyes, you know, meaning that like sometimes it's better to send a lazy person than not send anyone at all, but it will be damaged. So don't think about like there's a certain feeling that sometimes people have where like, well, I had to do it this way, so I'm somehow like entitled to the best results. Like, no. It's lazy person, they're gonna do a horrible job, you know, but you got to do it, and you can't go to the opposite extreme, which is I'm not gonna send anyone at all. That's like the example, that's like the saying of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, you know, like if you can't get 100%, so at least get 70, don't get 0, you know. And so I think that's an interesting application. And again, I think it's like what, I mean, it's the same idea, Zach, as what you were saying. It's just that you were dividing up the two things into different ideas, the vinegar and the smoke, whereas Rבינו Yona is saying it's the same, you know, which in that's why I would prefer your interpretation better, because it's the same idea. It's just, you know, adding a subtlety. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, I know you spoke a little bit about Tamar's idea, but I feel like I resonate more with Tamar's idea, because I feel like, isn't it more likely that the lazy person will just make it worse than like not, or is that just like, I don't know.
So this is really why it's good that there are multiple interpretations in Mishlei, that I think a person here should have both ideas in mind if they're in the scenario. Like you need to ask yourself, is this the type of case where like let's say like in my case of sending the student, what's the worst that happens is we start class 5 minutes late, you know? But if you send a lazy like younger sibling to like, you know, mail your college application and like they like lose it on the way, you know, or they're late, like it's you know, that could have a real effect, you know. So you have to ask yourself like what's going to be the best you know, which interpretation to apply here. I just want to read this last part, not the last part of the video. I want to read his segue because he asked an interesting question here. Okay, so the pasuk we did before was Tzadik Yesod Olam. Tzadik is the foundation of the world, and the pasuk that Bli Neder we're doing next time is about fear of Hashem. Okay, so this is check out what he asks here, and we're not going to read his answer. V'im bina shim'a zos mal atzel ulishlichus b'sof inyan hamidos hatzadik v'harasha. So he says, if you think and contemplate about the fact that it's talking about the lazy person in the midst of the traits of the tzaddik and the rasha. Oh, in fact, you want? I'm just going to show you this on the Mikros Gedolos, because then you could actually see the pasukim here. If you check this out, Rבינו Yona, move you guys here. Yeah, so check this out here. We have the previous two pasukim were about. So this is the fear of the rasha will come to him. That was the rasha fears will come to him, and the desire of the tzaddikim will he will provide. When the storm passes, the rasha is no more, and the tzaddik is the foundation of the world. Then you have a pasuk about the lazy person, and then you have a pasuk about fear of Hashem increases days, and the years of the wicked will be cut short. And you have the hope of tzaddikim is joy, and the hope of the rashayim will perish. So you see, what is the midah of the tzaddik? Sorry, what is this? Why is it talking about a lazy person in the middle of these speaking about tzaddikim and rashayim? Okay, so that's the Rבינו Yona's question, and he says, how can the sending of a lazy person be in here? Okay, now check out what he does, and again, we're not going to read this, but this answers the question of like, why are we focusing on sending a lazy person? He says, "V'ata amod lisbonen ki hamashal al melechas haTorah v'hamitzvos v'al shlichusam." So this is talking about the work of Torah and mitzvos and on their sending. Ki hamachzikim bahem sholchei Hashem. Those who cling to Torah and mitzvos are the agents of Hashem. And he goes and develops a whole idea about laziness in mitzvos. But I thought it was a really brilliant move here of like noting a cluster of psukim where there were five of them. Two of them on both sides had the we're talking about tzaddik and a rasha. The middle one wasn't just talking about laziness; it was talking about sending a lazy person. And then on that basis, and Rבינו Yona had a great idea on its own, but on that basis, he said, "What is this doing here?" And then he came up with an explanation in its context of the other psukim. So if you're going to learn psukim in context, like that's how it's done. Like it's not just Isaac. Are you there?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so it's not like we've seen Rבינו Yona in our Monday when we did our super ultra hyper mega meta mishlei review. We saw that like we were just trying to like loosely connect the order of the psukim and like associatively like join them. That's very different than what the Rבינו Yona is doing here. You know, he's answering a problem about what is this doing here amidst these other psukim, and I think that's like a different move of like looking at mishlei psukim in context. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, good. Okay, so just to wrap it up for tonight, I guess, for at least the main part of this year. So, so there were lots of ideas that you guys said, and I actually don't want to attempt to review them. You could do that afterwards if you want. The two basic ideas I was saying was the Metzudas David, which is closest to I think what Tamar was saying, is don't send a lazy person. The results could be disastrous. It could harm you like smoke in the eyes and vinegar to the teeth. So it's presuming he's talking about like a long-term exposure. And why would you send a lazy person? Because you view them as an extension of yourself when really they're their own person. Then there's Rבינו Yona's idea of no, sometimes you need to send a lazy person, and to not send him at all would be a bad decision. And to send him and not realize that he's going to do damage would be the bad decision. So send him and send him in bad health. Like send him and know that you're going to you're going to have to clean up his messes and like make sure that he did a good job afterwards. And like, it's not going to be good. But sometimes that's the best you could do, you know? So those are the two main ideas. And then there are some other ones as well. Okay. Any questions on these ideas or applications before we end the official shiur and segue to the 15-minute after party?
Would you say that the mashal in like the plain way would be like damage and pain?
Yeah, just two forms of damage and pain. Yeah, and not an explanation for why it says dafka these two. You know, maybe you can get the idea in there of impairing function, like I was saying before, that it's not just damage and pain. Like if you get a I don't know, like you could get a wound with a scar that doesn't heal, but that doesn't affect your ability to see or to eat, you know. And then with Rבינו Yona, he is pointing out again, like for him, the essential idea here is that these are things that are both beneficial and detrimental. That vinegar is good for medicinal purposes. You take it occasionally. And then with a fire, it's not like you're constantly sitting in front of a fire. It's when you need to light or provide heat, then you light a fire, but then you got the smoke in your eyes, you know? Alrighty, so let's stop the official shiur, and thank you for joining us. And next week will be the last scheduled week of the 2020-2021 year, and then we'll decide when to start up in the summer, if that. But yeah, so those who are leaving, have a good night. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead. No,
interfere there. I was the teeth and the eyes strike me just as something that are typically associated with weakening and softening with age, right? The elderly.
Yeah.
Those are the main organs, and you know, could almost be like you could just do a self-reflection for one to see the consequences of laziness in terms of their care, or in terms of you know, the choices they made, possibly with vinegar or fire, you know, in terms of giving them shot. But you know,
that's interesting. Further. Yeah, that it definitely has. You're right. It definitely has the I guess like the quality you were pointing out before of using them repeatedly has effects, and then like the quality of time in terms of the organs that are being affected. Yeah, definitely has that. My grandfather, my dad's father, would all had false teeth, you know, and he would always say, this is what happens when you don't brush, you know, and that was the warning. That's why I took care of my teeth. Yep.
I wonder.
Oh, okay. No, I was just gonna say for them, I think Rביnu Yona is who I'm thinking of. Yeah. Do you think that because he also points out the positive benefits and not just the negative ones, because his idea is that sending a lazy person isn't always detrimental. So do you think that those two ideas are related?
Sorry, just say the first part of your question again. I missed the connection.
Meaning, like, I had a feeling it was vague. The fact that like he gives a positive, like he says, like vinegar could be good and bad, and so can smoke. So he also says kind of the same thing about the lazy person, that he's not just like he's saying that it's just full bad.
That's his idea. Yeah. No, the lazy person, you'll get a benefit from him, but you also get these detriments.
No, meaning that's Rביnu Yona.
That's Rביnu Yona, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm saying, do you think that it's related to the fact that he's saying the positive and negative of smoke and vinegar?
Yeah, that's where he's getting the idea from. Yeah. I think that's what he's clinging onto as the essence of that muscle, and then that's where he's getting his idea with laziness. Yeah.
I wonder if kind of using that train of thought Isaiah started earlier of like looking at kind of where they're coming from, the fire and the vinegar. Yeah. If we could frame it in a way to show how Shlomo is incorporating both the מצודת and Rביnu Yona in his pasuk, by saying there's two scenarios you can be in when you are sending a lazy person. One is, once wine is turned to vinegar, the quality of it is gone. You know, it's bad wine now. Yeah. So it used to be good. It's no longer good. In that situation, when you have an option to send a messenger, and now you realize it's no longer good, you just don't send it. Versus the second option is just a byproduct. You're still getting the benefits of fire, but there's a byproduct of smoke, in which case you need to weigh your options and say, okay, is the fire worth the smoke?
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, it's kind of funny that it's cool that we're getting different considerations that you take into account based on our different interpretations of the two mashalim, you know, because again, it's not like those. See, some psukim I feel like that have a mashal, I feel like each way you take the mashal, it results in a completely different idea. Here, it all boils down to the same point of like, think about what this decision is about sending a lazy person, and all these just little subtleties are just different considerations to think about, you know. So in that sense, he also picked a good mashalim for this, you know. Because they lend themselves to different interpretations. I have an example of laziness, which I excuse myself for because I was doing a lot this year. But when I was teaching Mishlei in Shalhevet, I only taught like two Mishlei pasukim a week. So I would be very meticulous in writing down my 4-sentence summaries. And I started to do that this year. And then just giving 5 or 6, Mishlei shiurim a week, I just didn't do it. And I now regret the cumulative effect of having given, this shiur tonight is the 150th Mishlei shiur this year that I've given, which I'm happy about. But like, I now wish I had 150, 150 summaries, and like I was talking about this with Isaac about like how to rectify this for next year. And one of the things I realized that I am thankful about in this year that I've done, for some reason I've done this here, not in my daily Mishlei shiur, is here I feel like we do end off with a verbal summary. So at least there's that. And I can like go back and like listen to the last like 5 minutes, pre-after party 5 minutes of each of these shiurim and like get the summary. But like when we tried to do our review earlier this year with the morning shiurim, it was just like, this is like 5 months ago. I have no idea what I said, no record.
Just a kind of a prompt that might not lead anywhere, but it's kind of where my brain goes to is there a way to, I feel like where we went with this was very focused on a practical application for the sender.
Yes.
We were talking to the sender, the use cases for the sender. Is there a way to change that, possibly to anything else, or more specifically to the lazy person? Is there a way
I saw someone say that. I'm just trying to see if I included this on my sheet or not. Who said this? Oh, I totally forgot to even look at the Meiri. Oh, I'm sorry, Meiri. Yeah. Why? How did I forget that this time? And yeah, where did I see that? Yeah, we could think of it even if I can't find it.
What's the question?
The question is, could you apply this to giving advice to the lazy person himself? Definitely not the intuitive reading, but could it be done?
I mean, I feel like the first thing that comes to my mind is like pretty classic, is that like you wouldn't want to be interpreted or viewed as like that person who just like can't get tasks done, because then you're never going to be asked to do anything. And like, especially if you think about it in terms of like a career, like that's literally the worst possible situation like ever.
That's a good point, right? Meaning that that if you're if you are sent to do something and knowing that you're going to cause these effects to the sender, that's not going to work out well for you for jobs. That's a good point. That's a good direct application. Yeah, not a new idea, but a good direct application, which to me solidifies my conviction in like the fact that this is a good interpretation of the pasuk, or these are good interpretations. I feel like also we could use our Rביnu Yona thing, like, and let's just do a convoluted Zach interpretation where the sender and the lazy person are the same person. Like sometimes, I'm saying again, I'm saying going with Rביnu Yona's idea of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Like sometimes you make a certain task for yourself and you get so worked up in doing it perfectly and not cutting corners that you just end up not doing it, and then that ends up being really, really bad. Sometimes it is better to just like do it in a lazy way than to not do it at all. Now, sometimes that's horrible. Like, like you don't want to do that when you're like, I don't know, like surgery, you don't do surgery on yourself, but like, but you don't want to do that in certain cases, but sometimes it is better to just like push yourself, do it in an imperfect way. And that's like one of the things that they say for like getting rid of writer's block, is that I was just listening to a writer, and she also has had a lifelong habit of journaling. And she said that she'll often do the first drafts of her novel in her journal because it like tricks her brain into thinking like, it's in my journal. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not sitting here to write. I'm just journaling. Like no one's going to read this anyway, and like that lets her get out all of the writing without like holding it to this high standard. And then like she can apply the high standard later on.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess like just running with that is that using the view of Rביnu Yona's approach of like you're in a tight spot and you need to be practical, so in that case you could be the lazy person. You're attempting to do something,
right,
and if you have to try for something, you have to try for something. You just have to accept the smoke and the vinegar.
Yep. Yeah. Good lesson in self-compassion. Practical Mishlei self-compassion. There's therapeutic self-compassion, but that's the you get the bonus. You get both of them here.
Why is it lazy though? I mean, if somebody has to send the wrong person or the imperfect person, that does the choice to make that or recognize that necessity or propriety, doesn't equal laziness.
Not necessarily, but it can with Mishlei's expanded definition of laziness. Like sometimes you just I'll give you an example. Like sometimes it's just a matter of the mood that you're in. Like some times you find yourself just too much going on, too many responsibilities, and you just cannot tolerate immediate pain, and like there is a desire to just like not do something, but then sometimes if you the not doing it is going to end up being worse. And so if you just like let yourself just cut corners and just do it, then like it out of laziness, I'm saying, then you get the better results. So I'm not saying in like yeah, Johnny's right. It's like sometimes it's it's not due to laziness, but in the examples we're talking about here, then it could be. Like I had an example of this, and this actually ended up turning out well, because it was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I can't remember. A couple weeks ago, I was very exhausted at the end of the week, and I hadn't like cleaned my apartment in a very long time, and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to clean my apartment," and I said, "Okay, you know what? I'm just going to pick up like the really easy to throw away stuff, and then I'll be done with it. Like that's just like the easy, like the lazy solution. So I could feel like I cleaned up my apartment, and like even though it's not really doing it." I did that, and then that led to like, oh, that felt pretty good, and then like I did other stuff, and then I got into a groove, and then that ended up like resulting in like an actual clean apartment. So, but it starts off with just the little action. All right, I think I also have to go now, but I think this is a good pasuk, and I guess next week will be our last scheduled one for the time being, Blinator. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.